So go to webinar. You can type questions as we've just learned as we're doing it. So here we go. Let me just start out. Three simple little questions I'd like you to think about. I'd like you to think about what is innovation, why innovate, and how do you innovate? And I'm going to come back to the fun thing. But I want you to think a bit about what is innovation, why innovate, and how do you innovate? Because, ladies and gentlemen, what we're finding is that whenever we get into any of this conversation associated with innovation, that if we don't have agreement on what it is, why we do it, and how we do it, do not pass go, do not collect $200, as they say in Monopoly. You can't do anything. You can't do anything unless you get this agreement. So I'm going to go through some of these, but I want you to think for a second, in your organization, what kind of agreement do you have on what is it, why do we do it, and how do you do it? What we're finding is this root issue of agreement and then the three dimensions of alignment are actually the greatest barriers to doing it. When we ask people, this is over 12,000 people at companies, how successful is your company at innovating? We get, I think we call this the Pac-Man drawing, where the red is consuming the rest. So let me go through our definitions. So to give a clarity, and this is where we would get agreement as to the direction. And this is important because without this, you're not going to make it fun again. Okay? It's like this is the foundation that we have to put underneath things in order to be able to make this work. So the first question is, what is innovation? And our definition is a very specific one, which is meaningfully unique. Meaningfully unique. And what meaningfully unique means is it means customers are willing to pay more money for your offering, whether it's your product, your service, or you as an employee. In other words, it is so meaningful that they would be willing to pay. Now, you don't need to charge more. You can keep the price the same and take it and increase volume. But it has to be meaningful. And this is going to be critically important to the fun factor in that it has to be meaningful actually to three. It has to be meaningful to the customer, tick the box, to the company. It also has to be meaningful to you personally. In other words, we've got to make time for what matters. We've got to make time for doing those things. And it is oftentimes when we start an organization, when we found it, when we created it, or our dad or our mom or whoever it might be, granddad, whoever started the organization. When we started the organization, we did it oftentimes because there was something in there wrong that we wanted to right. Something where we thought we could make a difference in the world. And what's happened over time is that connection to meaningfulness has been lost. And in the stresses of the global economy and all of the challenges that we face, we get ourselves beaten up and all of a sudden we're doing stuff that doesn't matter. Said another way, the core to being able to make it fun again is to do, as Maggie Nichols says, it's about, but doing cool shit that matters. Doing stuff that makes a real difference in the world for our customers, works for our organization, but works for us personally where we sense a sense of value. Here's a quick test for the meaningful uniqueness at your place. Are your profit margins? Profit margin is a clear measure of meaningful uniqueness. 10%, 20%, 50% higher than your industry? See, if you're not making a margin, if customers are not willing to pay more money, if you can't make a higher margin, then fundamentally you're not meaningfully unique. I mean, and that means you're basically a commodity. Now, I don't mean to insult, I don't mean to be difficult. I'm just saying, if a customer's not willing to pay more money, you can say you got high quality and the rest of that stuff, but you clearly don't have quality that customers are willing to pay a difference for. I mean, this is a very simple definition. See, oftentimes companies start out having a real meaningful uniqueness, and they're able to do well, and business is good. And then in time, people without brains enough to be original copy them. And next thing you know, instead of us redoing it, we end up having a challenge, and then it's not much fun. See, there are two levels of innovation. There are core innovations that keep us competitive, but then there's the ones that change the trajectory, and these are the leap innovations. These are the ones that create our future. A balanced portfolio is 85% core and 15% leap. So core are these base things that are these continual improvements that we do. And the leap are the ones that change the trajectory. But 50% of our profit growth will come from the leap. Now the reality is, any of this stuff, changing anything, generates a risk. And core is small changes, small risks that generate a small reward. A leap is a bigger change in who we're selling to, what we're doing. It creates a big risk, and it has a big possible reward. Now in the world, a lot of people think they can do small change, small risk, big reward. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that is called delusional. There is no chance that that's going to happen. We need to confront the reality. Now, there are two types of innovations. There are those that are very important opportunities with current and new customers, and there are those that are very important systems for improving how we work, and we need both of these. And any organization that is designed has these things where it's what we're doing for customer, but also how we're doing it inside. And these are both important, because oftentimes to do the new things outside, you need to have the systems inside. Now, let me help you think through this. Imagine, let's use the analogy of a glass. So we've got this glass, and while everyone has stuff that must be done, everybody has, like the glass, it has some available time. There's some space. What you need to do is to make the most of that available time. I mean, the stuff that you got to do, answering the phones, doing that, that's the stuff. But when we spend more of that variable time, and we have more of our employees spending time on things that are meaningful to the customer, the company, and to the employee, then we set off a chain reaction of positives that makes it fun again. It's about maximizing return on investment on time, whether it's core innovations or leap, systems or opportunities. So why do we innovate? Because you don't want your organization to die. It's that simple, folks. It's that simple. Life and death. That's what we're talking about. Life and death. 75% of the S&P 500 is gone in 16 years. Why? Because they don't innovate. You see, the cycle to life is simple. We're born, we grow, we hit our peak, we go into cost cutting, and then we die. And virtually all organizations die, but they don't have to. Organizations can be reborn and restarted through innovation. Innovation, what it does is it restarts the life cycle, restarts the profitability. And in fact, those folks, when we survey CEOs, 300 or 400 CEOs, find that those that are on the growth side of proactive, life has been good over the last 3 years. It is truly the best of times for them, whether it's sales or profits, but it is the worst of time for those that don't. Now, a study that's been done multiple times is to ask companies, leaders, what is your strategy? What is your fundamental company strategy? And some people will tell you a lot of things. Low cost, quick delivery, voice of the customer, high quality. And then that data is correlated with their net profit margin, how much they make. And sure enough, what you find is that if you want to make money, if that's the goal, innovation is the only way to do it. And in fact, if you've decided that your focus is going to be on voice of the customer, customer intimacy, quick delivery, quality, or cost, and you're not making money, well, let's be no whining. Because that's the reality, folks. That's the reality. I mean, quite simply, if you're not meaningfully unique, you better be cheap. It's that simple. So let's take an example of a company. A company that sells bolts, like nuts and bolts. And they're going to turn a $2 bolt for industrial purposes to a $10 bolt. You say, well, that's crazy. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Well, the truth of the matter is they're doing it, and they're called smart bolts. And in industrial settings, oftentimes you have to retighten the bolts. You have to retighten the bolts that you've got in order to be able to make sure that the tension's there. Here, the indicator can tell you that the tension is still there, which reduces maintenance time by 80%. That's meaningfully unique. So, directly, how do you make business fun again? The simple way to make business fun again, whether it's Wall Street or Main Street, is to grow shareholder value. When you're growing the net asset, the net value, I don't care if you want to sell or you don't want to sell. When you're growing that basic asset, That gets you more fun. It creates opportunities, it creates growth, it creates jobs, it creates opportunities for your employees. If you do the kinds of things you have to do to grow shareholder value. Now, there's three things that you can do, and these are the three ways. The first is get a more profitable base business. Because the fundamental valuation of any organization is a multiple of the profits. And by increasing the profitability, by getting a share of your offerings more meaningfully unique so that we can make a higher margin, that has a direct one-to-one impact on the multiple of what you make. Second way to do this is to get a pipeline. So when a company is valued, the first thing they do is they take the base business, puts and takes, and say they do a multiple, and that's the base. Then things can be added. If we have specific capital, if we have intellectual capital, if we have patents, if we have ideas in the pipeline that are in development but that haven't been commercialized right, you can now get a value. And in fact, we can even tell you the valuation, depending upon where they're in the process, what they're worth and what they can be worth at the end. And in fact, with venture capitalists right now and investment bankers, we've got a number of companies who are working with companies that they own that they want to sell, and we're giving them a valuation which goes straight down to the bottom line. This is intellectual capital. The third thing is to have a sustainable innovation system that is driven by the employees. Because otherwise what happens, particularly in small businesses, is though you may have a key growth, they'll take a discount for the key person, and if you're selling it, you don't want to stay in it. It's also more fun for employees. Because quite frankly, the best way to grow value is to do cool shit that matters. I mean, I don't mean to be rude, I'm just saying, getting people engaged. So how do you do this? How do you do this? Well, I'm going to take you to December 1979. December 1979, in the living room at our home in Nashua, New Hampshire, my dad, who you can see there in the picture, calls me in to tell me about something he'd just learned. He said, Doug, it's been well known that you have a choice. You can have either high quality or low price, low cost. But you can't have both. If your quality goes up, the price is going to go up. If you drive the cost down, quality is going to go down. But he said, I've learned from a guy named Dr. W. Edwards Deming that you can actually have both if you change the system. That December changed my trajectory of my life and is the basis for the innovation engineering movement. Today it's thought that you can either have innovation speed or low risk, but you can't have both. In truth, what we found is you can have both by changing the system. And it comes from this guy, W. Edwards Deming, the man who commercialized systems thinking. The Deming Prize in Japan is the prize. Everything that you see, Toyota Manufacturing, Lean Six Sigma, this is the man who is the founder of all of those. He takes a systems approach. He says 94% of failures are due to the system, 6% are due to the worker. In August 1950 at this hotel, this being a more modern photo of it, he described manufacturing as a system, not just looking at the plant, but the interconnections from suppliers to consumers to reinventing to stay ahead of customers. Here's innovation as a system. Technologies, vendors, market needs come in. Leadership's growth strategy connects and the workers create ideas. We develop those ideas and take them to market, and then we learn. We learn not only what went wrong, but how to get ahead of the customers as we anticipate. We're proactive. We're anticipating the customer's needs to get ahead of the customers. This impacts our strategy and does it. This, my friends, is the innovation strategy. It involves leadership, it involves the workers, it involves our suppliers, it involves our customers. So innovation engineering is a movement. We're a small movement. 26,000 educated, 50 partners, 8.2 billion in active development projects. It's a collaboration from small companies, large companies, and universities. It's grounded in data. Now, I'll be clear, this presentation is like drinking from a fire hose, given the quantity that I'm going through so very quickly. But the fact of the matter is this is 6 university courses. 6 accredited courses where you create, communicate, commercialize systems, and then 2 experience courses where you make it real. It's taught as an undergraduate minor and as a graduate certificate and then in executive education programs. The 3 core principles behind this are that meaningful, unique ideas come from exploring stimulus, diversity of thinking, and driving out fear. The Create course is about exploring stimulus and leveraging diversity. The Drive Out Fear is about communicate and commercialize. The way the process works is this. Leadership defines what we need and why we need it. For you as an owner, this means you set the direction. And if you do this right with clarity, outlining the narrative as to why it matters, what is the mission, what are the exclusions, what are the constraints, what are some focus areas, you get to go fishing. Because you give with clarity. In the military, this is called commander's intent. And the principle is, if you were to get no further direction, you would know exactly what to do. And that's what we're looking to do with the blue cards. The blue cards are critical for leadership to get freedom from the day-to-day because you've given that direction. Employees then invent how to solve. We do this by exploring stimulus. There are 6 types of stimulus, and I'm just going to go through the big picture. The classic stimulus, or stimulus mining as we say, involves insight mining from the customer and market mining. Not just about what they want, but to understand it so that we can get ahead of them. We can anticipate their needs. Next up, technology mining. This involves wisdom mining, leveraging academic wisdom and patent mining. Now, don't stress out, because I know the minute I said academic mining and patent mining, a lot of people are like, this is painful. The good news is we have some incredibly cool systems that make it really easy to do. We had a team here just yesterday afternoon, a program, where some people literally mined patents, transformed them, turned them into business opportunity, did a sales forecast, found a fair market valuation, and did the whole thing in under 30 minutes. And these are people doing it for the first time, but they'd been taught. The last type of mining is stretch mining, where we're anticipating the future and we're using unrelated stimulus, because unrelated stimulus can give us a more divergent, more lateral thinking idea. We create by leveraging diversity. We focus on the customer and their problem. What are we going to promise them? What's the proof? And importantly, what's the math? And that's something that no other system out there does. There's no other innovation system that has the combination of right brain vision and left brain doing the math, practicality, patents, and how are we going to make it happen. That is a major difference versus any of the other approaches. Now the challenge is as we get going, and one of the problems that will happen to us is when we're doing something that's meaningfully unique, which means we've never done it before, this can spark fear. To address this fear, we take these uncertainties and risks and we relabel them as death threats. The death threats are dissolved by using fail fast, fail cheap cycles of learning. And what this is not throwing stuff against the wall. It's the Deming cycle. Plan, do, study, act. Plan, the hypothesis. Doing the smallest experiment we do. Studying what we learned and then taking action. Either going around again, stopping, or whatever it is. This is not just a scrum of keep throwing stuff out there. It has discipline to it. 7 days is the longest cycle. World class is 1 hour cycles. Now, we then have develop and deliver. Everybody has systems to taking ideas to market. The big decision is before you go in. And in order to make smarter decisions, we add a couple stages at the front. A define and discover stage at the front. We define the full idea, the full hypothesis. We then do discover. Those things that are uncertainties we call death threats, and we run rapid cycles. And we do it with discipline. Now, the 5 pillars to making this whole thing work is this. And this is how you can make it fun again. The first is a mindset. We have to have agreement on what is innovation. Why do we do it? And how do we do it? What is it? It's meaningfully unique. Why do we do it? Because it resets the curve and it gives us eternal life as a company. It's about growth and staying in business. How do we do it? Stimulus, diversity, and drive out fear. And we have to get that fundamental thing. If we don't get that fundamental thing, we can't go anywhere. Next up is alignment. 3 dimensions of alignment. We need to connect strategy, tactics, customers, and departments. So we need to connect the leadership's vision to the tactics of the workers. We need to connect department to department in how we work, and we need to connect the company to the customer. If we don't have alignment of these, nothing else works. I don't care how cool of a designer you've got. I don't care what else you've got. If we don't have these together, it's not going to work. And the research, alignment is number 1. Coming to our Innovation Engineering Conference, 62% of the people said their biggest challenge was alignment. Not ideas, alignment. In Europe, just recently, Brian did a fascinating study looking at companies and different things. And while it's hard to see here, the #1 correlation with business results was strategic alignment. So here's our foundation. Agreement and alignment is our foundation, a basic operating system and a mindset. Now, to make your company world-class, once we get alignment, we get going, and now we get scared. Because all of a sudden, we've got cool ideas, but it gets to be concerning. So then we have to build courage. And we build courage by decreasing risk with fail fast, fail cheap systems, bringing in technologies and systems that allow us to do rapid cycles of learning. Having done that, now all of a sudden we have too many ideas. We have more ideas than we can do. So we need to build capacity. And we build capacity through collaboration. Collaborating across our organization and between our organization and the outside. And this is part of this whole open innovation movement. I'm not going to talk to you about some theoretical things. I'm talking about practical stuff to get this going. Now, having this, the question is can we really own this? And that's where we have to get an advantage, and that's what's called patent ROI. To get sustainable competitive advantage and to be able to get companies doing it. And on average, when people do a project, 5 to 10 patents are filed. In fact, we're working on systems. In fact, this morning I was looking at a system to allow you to write and file a patent in about an hour. In about an hour. For a few $100s to file a provisional patent. The bottom line at Procter & Gamble, when I led what was called the invention team, an audit by the finance department found that following these 5 pillars, with myself and Eric Schultz and Melissa, the 3 of us, we were able to take an idea to market in 16% of the time, 10% of the cost, and 10% of the staffing. So how do you get this going? The first thing is we have some samplers. We've got a whole bunch of different samplers that you can do. One-day experiences, 90-minute breakfast, lunch and learns, afternoon. We've got some samplers that the various members of the Innovation Engineering Network here and up in Prince Edward Island and around the world can do. Then the idea is to do a test drive. You got to try on this new mindset and find out, is this mindset really going to work for you? And then lastly, we bring it inside. We bring it inside to make it work. So you kind of kick the tires. You get a sense on it. You then turn around, you try a test drive on something that's very important with a group of volunteers. If it works, you bring it in. So I made a bold promise in this webinar that it was going to make it fun again. Well, I've got a guy from a company called Whitney Blake up in Vermont, Sheldon. Sheldon Scott has a company, they make cables, wiring harnesses. It's not a sexy business, but it's a business. It's a good, solid business. Well, a little under a year ago, Sheldon came to one of our samplers and learned about what we were doing. He then got engaged and got the test drive and put himself in and led from the front, going to black belt to learn that. And here's a video that he sent me just a little while ago at the beginning of the baseball season, reporting on what was happening. And so here is a cable that the team has put together that is used for the microphones of firefighters when they go into a fire. The challenge is that when they go into a fire, those cables are the weak link. And if they lose them, if they lose connection, if they melt and others, they're no good. Here's Sheldon talking about it.
Okay, Doug, here we are. We're at Fenway Park, and Whitney Blake has a great update for the IE community. Back in June at the leadership retreat, we were able to develop a product, an idea for a product for firemen to save lives. We introduced that product concept into the portal in August of 2013. By October, we had sat there and we were able to go do define, discovery, and into develop, and actually made a working prototype in 8 days. First time ever. In November, the NFPA was so excited that we were working on a cable to solve their problems that they let us use their NIST lab outside of Pittsburgh for nothing. We tested our cable, the cable passed. We tested the cable 10 times for the same test. It passed all 10 times. It was awesome, totally awesome. Then we had a customer call us right after Thanksgiving looking for a similar product for the application. We said, hey, we've got this new product that we're coming out with called Fire Tough, but we need to file a patent. So in December 2013, we filed a patent. In March of this year, I was sitting with the customer, and the customer was actually pitching me, the supplier, for an exclusive on my product. Tell you, that's the place I want to be more often. With innovation engineering, we can do that. So, Sheldon Scott from Fenway Park, Game 2 of the season, signing off. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Kind of cool. Kind of cool, like by a lot. Here's a note I got about a week ago from Sheldon. He said, hey, Doug, want to give you an update on FireTough. We signed the exclusive agreement. We just received the first order today to start filling the pipeline for North American launch. Annual sales revenue based on volume will be in the blank million range with just this one product. More configurations coming. The IE team that worked on this is pumped. This is the coolest place to be in the world. I used to be the guy in your video with his head on the computer saying there has to be a better way. We have found it. We have found it. Work is fun again. Work is fun again. Thank you to the whole IE community. We are all in for the journey. Folks, this is what it's about. Doing cool shit that matters. They're saving firemen's lives. That's what it's about. A cable company in Vermont is going to make a difference in the world. That's what gets you fired up again. That's why you started the company. That's why your dad started the company. That's why the team got together to do it. That's what it's about. Okay, so that's a small company. Now let me go to the very large company. This is a company called Edrington from Scotland. They make a product called the Macallan, which is a Scotch whiskey. In fact, they're owned by a non-profit, so when you drink it, you're doing it for the benefit of the children of Scotland, you could say. 12 years ago, the Macallan was at a decision point. Supplies were a challenge, pricing was a problem, lots of issues around the world with regards to where they were going to go. The future looked bleak. Ken Greer got involved, who decided to go all in on innovation. And when I'm talking about all in, I'm talking about all in. And we're talking about new types of products. We're talking about fine oak. We're talking about unaged lines. We're talking about partnerships and collaborations. Again, capacity, no money, no staff, collaborations with everything. Getting on the Bond movie for not a ton of money, getting Oakley, other folks, changing things. A never-ending stream of relentless innovation took this company at this decision point and changed the trajectory. But even more important, the profit grew. Remember I said meaningful, unique means customers are willing to pay more money? Has grown 1,200%. And what's most important to this is that during 08-09, many of the premium spirits lost as much as 50% of their profitability while Macallan held it. As Ken Greer says, if anyone has any questions about how well it works, have them call me. Ken's having fun. The Edrington team has fun with Macallan around the world. Folks, that's what it's about. Our mission, to change the world by transforming innovation from a random gamble to a reliable system. And yes, while it delivers increased speed and decreased risk, it makes it fun again. It makes it fun to run the company. It makes it fun to work at the company because you have hopes for a better future. And that's what it's about. Hey, don't listen to me. But if you don't change, you're going to die. You're going to die. And death ain't fun. So that's what I got. Let me look down now. If you've got any questions, I know we went a little bit over because of some of the blitz here. I'm going to go down through some questions. Feel free to type some in. We got some people tweeting this out to some folks. Okay, here's a question. We're a service company. We're a service-focused company. We don't sell products. How does this apply to us? Well, folks, it's pretty much the same, except you have to change your frame of reference a little bit. A service or a product is still something you're selling. And so if I'm selling a service, there's still a customer, there's a problem that you're filling, and there's a promise you're making to the customer, and there's proof for how you're able to do that which you promise. Same structure. Now, oftentimes it'll be different. So like I was with some folks yesterday, they were talking about a job shop, a metal job shop. They said, how can they do something different? I said, well, they can offer different services. Maybe they have a unique capability, a punching capability, a tolerance capability, a prototyping capability. Maybe they can work with titanium and others can't. Maybe they can mix materials together. I mean, there's an endless stream of things you can do as a service to offer your customers new service. I mean, every place, every restaurant you go to is not the same. Their services are different. Every accounting firm you go to is not the same. Some of them have a different philosophy, one versus another. People that come and do landscaping are not the same people. They have a different philosophy. Some might be more artistic, some might be more focused on being able to work in severe locations because they understand plants and the ecosystem in the area. There's an endless variety of ways that you can add that dimensions on top of it. Okay, next question. Quite simply, we don't have a lot of money. I'd love to do this, but I don't have any money. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here's the cool news. The cool news is what you quickly find is that it doesn't take a ton of money. And in fact, inside your organization, you're not going to have to make any other investments. I mean, you gotta make an investment to get educated. That's a base thing, because you don't know what you don't know. You gotta be educated. But fundamentally, to do this stuff, you have a lot of activity going on. Or, as they say in engineering, I'm a chemical engineer, so I'm kind of into that. He said, you have a lot of energies being expended, but work isn't being accomplished. And so what we have to do is we have to look at the stuff we're doing and saying, is what we're working on very important? Very important. And if it's not very important, then we need to stop. And we need to decide, is it really needed? In fact, just before I got on here, I was having a conversation with one of my folks, and we were talking about some stuff that we're working on next week, and we talked about what was very important and what was not. Now there's a lot of work. We could work for months doing it. But there were some elements of what we're talking about that are not very important. So we're going to focus our resources on that. That's where the blue card's are key. You have to have a clear vision for management as to what is most important and what do we need to work on. That's where we have to go. Okay, as I see the clock, our time's there. If you've got other questions, feel free to... Okay, oh, here's another one that just came in. Is there a place for IE when you're in a commoditized business, as commoditized as salt can be? So the answer is absolutely yes. And I tell the story of Gary Gottenbush. Gary Gottenbush sells flour, water, salt, and yeast. He has a high-end retail bakery and is growing at 20% a year with double-digit growth in profit margins. And he's able to do this because he's found ways to add value. Cemex down in Mexico we've worked with. You know, I mean, they sell dirt. They sell dirt. But they innovate. And what they innovate on is not the cement, although they do some waterproof cements, and they've done some of those things, and we've played with them on it. But they innovate in all of the services associated with it, whether it's the delivering of the cement, whether it's the packaging of the cement, whether it's the forms for the cement, whether it's the financing for the cement. In other words, they take the frame, and instead of just looking at it as cement, they look at the broader dimensions to see what's there. There are no such thing as commodity categories. Only people who have come to a realization to say that they are a commodity. You can transform it. In fact, I will give you a personal challenge. Take any industry, any category, and I personally guarantee you can add value on top of it. Now, your customers are kind of working against you on this, because at first they're trying to drive your price down so they get the lower price, because they have the imagination of a gnat. They can't see what's possible. But when you create that thing that takes them to a new place, that brings new thing, that's what gets them excited, and it then generates pull for your idea when you are meaningfully unique, when you're doing something that nobody else can do. That's what we're looking for. Okay, if you've got other questions, you're going to follow up, you feel free to email me directly. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. At the top of the hour, we're going to go more in depth on Create. A lot of the blog posts had that out there. They had both of them on it. I'm going to go deep into the Create and some changes recently from the curriculum. We just had the Innovation Engineering Institute, which involves academics and the academic community, as well as Fortune 100 companies, as well as small companies. Representatives from all those came together and made some recommendations for this movement as to do. And so at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be going, 2 o'clock Eastern time, I know we've got folks all over, we're going to be doing that. We also, I can see from my list here, I've got a whole bunch of good friends from Prince Edward Island and from Eastern Canada on, and I'd like to say welcome to you. And I'm looking forward to it because in just a couple of days, I'm heading north to go back home to the island. And I look forward to being up there. So thank you very much, everybody. And if you want, join us at 2, and we'll be going more in depth on creating ideas, in particular the stimulus. And there we go. Thank you much.